29 other states do have this plate. We feel like it was a good conversation to have. I appreciate the argument inside of the Transportation Committee. It came out 8-0. I think you have lots of support on the floor and in Nebraska. I did offer AM 37, which basically changes where the funding was going to go. I felt like that was part of the concern about where the funding was actually going. My amendment basically puts it into TANF, which is Temporary Assistance for Needy Families. So with that, I would ask for your support on AM 37 and LB 46. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Watermeyer. Seeing no one in the queue, Senator Watermeyer, you're welcome to close on AM 37.
Waive. I'll waive closing.
Senator Watermeyer waives closing. Yeah, but we're already closing. The question before us is the adoption of AM 37. All those in favor vote aye. All those opposed vote nay. Have all voted that wish to? Record, Mr. Clerk.
38 ayes, no nays on the adoption of AM 37, Mr. President.
AM 37 is adopted. Going back to the queue, Senator Chambers, you're recognized. Excuse me, Senator Chambers, we have amendments. Mr. Clerk.
Mr. President, there are other amendments, the first being from Senator Moorfield, AM 40.
Senator Moorfield, you're welcome to open on your amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Colleagues, I filed AM 40 for a few different reasons. First, when I originally read the bill, my first impression is, well, if somebody wants their license plate, then that's fine. They can have their license plate. It doesn't bother me really one way or another, and I'll get to that in a moment. That being said, as I read the bill, I saw that the funding would go to support child abuse, which I'm obviously in support of more funding going to child abuse. The concern that I had is this is a license plate that obviously touches on a deep-rooted, hot-button political issue for many people in the body on both sides of that issue. And that if I didn't agree necessarily with the message on the license plate, I would also have to vote against funding for children that are experiencing child abuse. And that's a very deeply personal issue for me. It's something that I experienced as a child. And I didn't like the way that that put me in a position to have to vote against funding for child abuse. And so my amendment, what it does is it changes the message from choose life to stop child abuse. Now, several people came up to me and talked to me about this, including the introducer of the bill and including several supporters of the bill, and asked me about my amendment, and I explained to them the background and the purpose of it. I believe that the amendment we just passed generally takes care of my concerns that is being addressed by AM 40. That being said, one of my other concerns about this bill is the fact that generally license plates that we have approved are for the most part fairly non-controversial in the sense of celebrating our 150th birthday or recognizing people's military service depending on the branch of service in which they serve their country. This is an issue that is fairly controversial. And it concerns me that we essentially give the stamp of the state on a controversial issue that is very divisive and that goes on a state-funded license plate without giving the opportunity for other people who may have a differing view to have a differing license plate. Would Senator Watermeyer yield to a question?
Senator Watermeyer, would you please yield?
Yes, I would.
Senator Watermeyer, if I substitute this amendment with an amendment that would allow for both the Choose Life license plate, but then also a pro-choice license plate, would that be a friendly amendment or would that be a hostile amendment in your opinion?
To me, that'd be hostile to the intent of my bill.
Okay, thank you, Senator Watermeyer. Colleagues, that's the reason why I'm going to oppose this legislation in the end. is that if we are going to put political statements on state license plates, then we should be able to avail our citizens of both arguments and both sides of the debate. One issue that is a hot button issue for me is voter ID and voting rights. I would not feel comfortable supporting a bill that says oppose voter ID on our state license plate without giving the other opportunity for citizens who disagree with that to have the opposing license plate and the message on that license plate, which would be support voter ID. Personally, I feel as though we should not be putting political messages on our state license plates. I think that if we're going to allow for customized plates of this type of nature, then what we should do is make sure that they are non-controversial, non-political message type of plates that the vast majority of the state can get around. And that's why I'm going to oppose this legislation. I'll let my amendment go to a vote, but in the end, I do not believe that we should have hot-button political issues and messages be a part of our state license plate where the state of Nebraska's stamp is on it. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Moorfield. Senator Chambers, you're recognized.
Mr. President, members of the legislature, I agree with what Senator Moorfield said, but I would add a proviso. I am extremely opposed to this kind of material on the license plates. I'm not going to go into a long discussion of how I had always fought these matters, and then when I was gone during term limits enforced vacation, they meaning the legislators, any number of types of license plates on the books. Not one of them that I could look at dealt with the attempt to inject a political debate onto the license plate in the same way that the so-called social media creates, foments, and encourages antagonistic relationships between and among individuals and groups. Abortion has corrupted this legislature so much that the law currently, I believe, still has attacks against the U.S. Supreme Court for its decision legalizing abortion based on the idea of a personal right of privacy that belongs to a woman. That personal right of privacy belongs to everybody. There are certain so-called zones of human conduct where that right obtains. It can be found, a basis for it, in the 14th Amendment, the 9th Amendment, the 5th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, and what they call the penumbra of the Bill of Rights, which would be the first 10 amendments. I hear all of these conservatives talk about excessive government regulation until it comes to something that they want to regulate. The government ought to stay out of people's personal affairs until their personal